Nathaniel Hawthorne, Herman Melville, Emily Dickinson, Walt Whitman, Mark Twain. These are some of the names that you'll find if you were to search for American literature online. These are like the main authors in the American canon. But what makes American literature unique? What are the characteristics that make something identifiably American? So I'm definitely not an expert on this topic, but I think we can safely identify a few themes, a few threads that make something characteristically American. So, for one thing, as the name implies, a lot of American literature is set in America, on in that landscape. Thematically speaking, American literature, I think, is often characterized by what you might call a rugged individualism. Sometimes it strikes me more as like a flamboyant individualism, like an individualism which feels so over the top, so extra. An example of that I'm thinking of is Walt Whitman's Song of Myself. The way class is described, upper class versus lower class in American literature, I think is pretty unique. And it's dealt with quite differently than what you'd expect to see in European literature, for example. But one of the threads, one of the motifs that is so central to American literature, I think, is its unbelievable, its shocking violence and its shocking bloodiness. The story of America, the story of American history, is a story of these refugee colonists coming to try to live, to try to survive in this foreign land. And they lived an extremely austere life. Their death rate was very high, and they were fundamentally religious. They were basically Christian fundamentalists. And their religion was very strict and very austere. These early settlers seem to have been guided by a really strong sense of destiny, a really strong sense of purpose, and they were also characterized by a capacity for unimaginable cruelty. The story of America is the story of these settlers that arrive and commit total genocide, a complete genocide of the native population here. The story of America is the story of hundreds of years of slavery, of abject slavery of Africans. And I think those threads, those themes of religiosity, sense of purpose, and unbelievable cruelty often come through in American literature. A really useful and a really powerful text in this regard is Moby Dick. Moby Dick is a quintessentially American book. One of the main characters is Captain Ahab, who is a megalomaniac. He's obsessively dedicated to chasing this white whale. And Moby Dick is an incredibly violent book. It's a bloody book, although the blood and the gore is whale blood, not human blood. There's one scene in Moby Dick when Ishmael, our narrator, is applying for a job aboard the Pequod, which is the name of a ship, and he meets one of the captains of the ship, whose name is Captain Bildad. And so Ishmael describes to us the character of Captain Bildad as follows. Quote, Captain Bildad had not only been originally educated according to the strictest sect of Nantucket Quakerism, but all his subsequent ocean life and the sight of many unclad, lovely island creatures round the Horn, all that had not moved this native-born Quaker one single jot, had not so much as altered one angle of his vest. Still, for all this immutableness, was there some lack of common consistency about worthy Captain Bildad. Though refusing from conscientious scruples to bear arms against land invaders, yet himself had illimitably invaded the Atlantic and Pacific, and though a sworn foe of human bloodshed, yet had he in his straight-bodied coat spilled tons upon tons of Leviathan gore. How now In the contemplative evening of his days, the pious Bildad reconciled these things in the reminiscence I do not know. But it did not seem to concern him much, and very probably he had long since come to the sage and sensible conclusion that a man's religion is one thing, and this practical world quite another. What Ishmael calls this lack of common consistency, I think, is very central to the American experience. On a personal level, I often have the experience of reading the news, of learning about current events, and sort of being shocked by this, and asking how this nation, which is so religious and so self confident, so self assured, can also be so cruel. For me, Cormac McCarthy's Blood Meridian, the full title of which is Blood Meridian, or The Evening Redness in the West, is this theme, this element of American literature taken to its extreme, its absolute extreme. Blood Meridian is a story about American history. It's set in the American West in the mid 1800s, so like the 1850s. It takes place around the border area between the United States and Mexico, and it offers a brutal, unflinching look at the bloodiness and the brutality of that history. For me, this book asks, what is it like to see that history, to sort of inhabit this landscape of blood? I think this book offers a certain perspective which is impossible to get anywhere else in any other book. And I personally have been haunted by many of the themes and the characters and the quotes from this book.